All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the analysis meeting on January 25th, 2022. On the agenda for today, we have our usual check-in and then just a quick memo about the COVID protocol for the lab. Then we'll take a look at our spring semester task list and what we plan to use that for and implement within the team. And then we'll talk a little bit about more of the specific projects we're working on, including the fin shape decision and the boat tail FEA. Then we'll talk about something we haven't talked about in a long time, the documentation, which is just updating that and then culminating in a February progress report. And then we'll end it off with any questions anyone has. So for the check-in, just any recent progress you've made on tasks and specifically any obstacles you've encountered. Are you still happy with the validation and design team split? And is there anything you personally would like to see more or less of, whether that's the types of tasks you're working on or the amount of work that you're taking on, really anything? And then if you could change one thing about how analysis operates, what would it be?
I'll go, I guess.
All right, go ahead.
So me and Goose were discussing a little bit about the fin shapes a few days ago. Some progress on that. We were able to get FinSim, the real version, which is sweet. I haven't really discovered how to use it. I don't know if Gustavo has yet, but it seems pretty complicated, so that might be a next step for us. So yeah, I'm still happy with the validation and design split. It seems kind of like it's more flexible now. We're all kind of doing what we need to, which is cool. And I don't know what we could change.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Anyone else?
I could speak a little bit about what I have done last little bit,
sure.
but I mean, I talked to back in like the very end of December. I talked to payload. I talked to structures. I talked to avionics, and I talked to recovery about specific things that they need to be added on CAD models. All of them came back with like the same answer, really, of like they haven't really finalized a lot of those small design decisions. But once they all do get final like designs for like holes or anything specific that we could add to our CAD designs, they would reach out to me or just reach out to Ravi in general about just like what they have. And then the only thing that we didn't CAD was the boat tail, but it seemed like structures already had that taken care of. So
Yep.
From a CAD perspective, I'm pretty sure Zenith is as CADed as we can get, and until we get more finalized, like very small design decisions, we won't be able to like really get it finished.
Right. Well, that's great to hear. I'm glad you're at that spot. Ethan?
All right. I can go. So in recent progress wise, sorry, I'm in the same room as Ravi, so it's like kind of weird. So me and Arturo, we met in the lab yesterday. Well, he was virtual and I was in the lab, and we kind of set up how we want to tackle the FEA, and then set up a little mini report, kind of an informal report that I guess we can do as our deliverable for it. So yeah, and then I think Goose just sent the part file of the boat tail itself yesterday. So we're going to take a look at that and then hopefully get started on it in this coming week, probably at the lab tomorrow. And I am happy with the validation and design team split. I think, you know, people having those different roles or probably the most, it's probably the most efficient way to kind of go forward. And then if I could change one thing about how we operate, that's a tough question. I don't think I can give a good answer. So I'm passing.
Thank you, Omar. Much appreciated. Anyone else? If not, I will go. Okay, cool. I will. So recent progress that I've made has just been looking over the RAS Arrow tool for FinFlutter and trying to mess around with the beauty that RAS Arrow is, and definitely encountered some obstacles with that. So trying to work those through. But also been busy on the AIAA side, working on our sponsorship package and getting, I guess, focusing on getting some funding for SCR. I personally am still happy with the validation design team split. More just wanted to see where you guys were at because we haven't really mentioned it in a long time. And something I'd like to see more of, I think, is, I guess, increased communication and just in general of the continuity of working on tasks, because I feel like maybe it was the break, but I feel like recently things have been very stop-start in terms of the tasks we've been working on, and it's been kind of hard to get on the same page with everyone. So hopefully as the semester starts back up and we get into the flow of things, we can have some better communication and stay on the same page. And changing one thing about how we operate, I think it would be to probably adhere to the sub-team task agreement, which I'll be talking about, and using that as a good baseline for each of the projects that we're doing, and then also the subtasks within them. And Christian, I saw your message. That's all good. Working on getting back into the loop. I guess everyone is with coming back to school and classes starting again. So hopefully the schedule works out for y'all and we can get some good work done. All right, moving on. Just a brief reminder about the COVID protocol for the lab. You do need a negative test in the past 14 days in order to get into the lab. So if you are going to the lab tomorrow, please make sure you have that negative test and you can DM me your results. Mask still necessary as usual, no surprise there. And just a reminder that it's even more important to sign in and out just so we know who's been in the lab and for how long in the unfortunate event that someone does test positive. So now the spring semester task list. This is currently what our major projects, they're bolded, are looking like for the spring semester. Definitely expect more to be added as we move along and as certain things come up and are, I guess, is under our jurisdiction and responsibility. But so far the nose cone decision has been made. Thanks to Will looking at the drag analysis data with us switching all the way back when from 4-inch back to 6-inch and then from the N class to the O class motor. So we did determine that OGIVE was the best, but I wasn't sure, Will, if you updated the documentation yet. So, I mean, I'll be talking about documentation later on, but just keep in mind that it is something you are responsible for and shouldn't take too long. On the horizon, we have that fin shape decision, some updated documentation, the boat tail FEA, and then the February progress report. all of which I'll talk more about in depth this meeting, but more about the actual task list itself. I sent it in the Discord and pinned it earlier today for everyone's reference. And really the goal here is for once we get our like major projects defined, and most of them are defined. For example, the Boattail FEA, Arturo and Omar working on that. Under each kind of major project, I want to give you guys the freedom to determine what kind of subtasks need to be completed for each project in order for that main milestone or main project to get done. And then assigning those due dates, and then assigning those people or just signing up for what you're interested in taking on, I think is much better for the entire team. It'll give you some added responsibility and also kind of what you're more comfortable with doing. But if you don't sign up for anything, keep in mind, I will probably sign you up for something. So kind of, if you take the initiative and kind of claim what you want and what you're interested in, then great. And that's really what I'm looking for. So now, first topic of discussion is the fin shape decision. Ideally, this decision will be made by Monday, January 31st. And that is Mike, Amy, and Will working on it. As Will mentioned in his check-in, him and Gustavo were at the lab, or talked through Zoom at the lab about fin shape and specifically fin flutter. And I know Randy had mentioned to us that a Concorde style fin may show improved characteristics for kind of the three main categories that we're looking at for fin shape. That's stability, how do the fins affect stability? How do the fins affect apogee? And will the fins be able to survive flutter and I guess not flutter at the speed that we're going to be going at? So for fin flutter, which I think it will be an extremely useful way for us to start to decide kind of what shape do we want the fins to be. I think it'll be difficult to only look at stability and apogee to then narrow down and definitively say, this is why we went with this design of fins, because it gave us this stability and it projected us at this apogee. I think using fin flutter in its justification is extremely useful and an extremely sound just engineering process. So for fin flutter, as I mentioned in my check-in, looking into the RAS Aero method, but also the Aero fin sim, I think is probably a little more promising and a little more detailed. And thanks to Gustavo and Randy, the full download of that is now available on the drive. If you've gone to their website before, you'll see that they made kind of like a light version for everyone to download, and only their exclusive group of friends and colleagues can download the full version. But we do have the full version available on the drive to download. I believe it's under testing and analysis, fin design, and then it should be easy to find from there. But yes, for Mike, Amy, and Will specifically, I would like you guys to add the sub-steps that are necessary to complete the overall decision to the sub-team task agreement. So you could look at different things like adjusting the fin shape within a certain set of parameters or certain set of values, and then running simulations on those, and having each three of you, I guess, tackle something different or work together on different sub-steps that you deem necessary, and then adding deadlines for each subtask. I think I'll discuss with you guys what works best with your schedule and obviously the schedule of the team in trying to give you guys the best opportunity to put in your best work. Now, the Boattail FEA, as Omar mentioned, Gustavo did upload the CAD to the drive yesterday. But the exact layup of the fiberglass sheets has not been decided and hasn't been performed yet. So for Omar and Arturo, kind of the same thing, adding the sub steps for the sub-team task agreement and the deadlines. And yeah, mainly just wanted to see what you guys took away from lab yesterday, because I know you didn't have the CAD. So wanted to see what you were talking about, I guess specifically to simplifying the analysis and giving us some better results, unlike with the Oberon MMM.
Right. So pretty much in the lab, like I just mentioned a little bit before, the first thing we did was say that we wanted to do kind of a informal report as our deliverable. But besides that, since the boat tail itself, I've been trying to open the part file that has been working, but since it's pretty much just going to be one part, I don't think it'll be as difficult because it's not really like an assembly. We're not going to really take into account the entire rocket, just more so that part, and then constrain it as necessary, and then apply the necessary loads. And then in regard to those loads, we were thinking of doing the landing impact or the landing force of when the rocket hits the ground. So I've been working on the calculations for that. I remember Gustavo, when he was on structures, he created, he did a calculation for that. I don't know if you remember it, but I saw it and I was kind of basing it off that, but definitely want to double check it. On top of that, I'm trying to remember what the other one that we decided on was, but I don't know why I can't remember it off the top of my head, but there was another one that we wanted to do. So it'll probably be two different analysis run so far. And yeah, that's pretty much it in regards to like the specific layups. Arturo sent me a video on it for fiberglass layups. So we're gonna watch that and then hopefully get more info on it for tomorrow. But one thing I did want to mention, kind of like a side note, and I obviously saw it yesterday, but not to like the access codes or whatever, not the access code, but the licenses, I think it runs out in 6 days for FEMAP. So obviously we can check to see if we can get those renewed, but I was thinking if we can't, or in the meantime, if there's like a little bit of time between when like he responds and they run out, I would recommend, I guess, just using the SolidWorks FEA. I know maybe not a lot of people would be fans of that, but I personally have a lot more experience with it than FEMAP. I know Arturo has been focusing more on FEMAP, so we could probably help each other out in that aspect, but just wanted to bring that up in case it did get to that point. And yeah.
I'd also mention that there is the what's it called, COMSOL, which is pretty useful from my limited experience, and I think the Mankey department has licenses if you're in the FEA class.
I am in that class, by the way, so I do have console downloaded.
Yeah, and I can give like a tiny little workshop of what I do know, just to give y'all like a, I guess, a head start, but don't expect like a full-on course on everything.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Yeah, I think we'll look at, if we can't get the licenses, we'll look at either console or SolidWorks, as you said. I do think if we do decide to take that route just because of the licenses, hopefully once we get the license back, we can try running something using FEMAP in addition to the SolidWorks or console, whatever we choose. I think having something to show for what Siemens has given us, and kind of because that's falls into the analysis domain, is pretty cool and is within our scope. So yeah, just a quick heads up that I do have you down to finish that by next Friday. So I know, as we mentioned, the licenses and they should be in, and it shouldn't delay you, but how does that sound as a deadline?
Yeah, I think next Friday, still like 10 days or so. I think that should be good. But if once we once we like actually start really diving into it, I guess we'll update you if anything does come up.
Thank you, Omar and Goose. So now talking about documentation. As you guys probably know, we do not have much updated documentation post PDR. So this is a quick list of things, kind of the key things that I've thought of off the top of my head that we do need to update. As I mentioned, Will, the nose cone analysis and just finishing up the changes that were made throughout that entire project. I think the Oberon MMM FEA deserves maybe not its own report, but at least a document detailing kind of the steps we took, what went wrong, what went right, and what we really learned from that process. I know both Omar and Arturo have been putting together kind of like a collection of FEA notes and tips from their experience using the software or using FEMAP. And that should be extremely helpful, not only to us this year, but also to future SCR teams down the line. And then the February progress report, I'll talk about on the next slide. And then there is definitely more that we should probably update. And it will require a group effort. And if each of you could pick a project or a section to update, I think naturally you might want to just pick the one you've worked on, which should expedite some of the documentation process and the fun that is. So I guess just adding under the subteam task agreement, adding its own row under that for which kind of section of documentation you'd like to tackle. And then corresponding to the overall dates would also be super helpful. Now, the February progress report, we have decided, or the leads have decided, that it is due February 14th. So as I just mentioned, big group effort here. And it will follow the same format as the summer progress report way back when. That feels like forever ago. But this should cover literally everything post PDR, and it will be made easier when we start updating the documentation kind of step by step, as I mentioned on the last slide, and then kind of piecing it all together into the progress report. So I think this thing of updating the documentation and for each of these projects will make it much, much easier and almost like a cut and paste into the February progress report. So don't worry that you are writing too much. I think I'll take care of most of the structure of the progress report. I'm just more looking for you guys to fill in kind of the tasks that you've been working on, and then detailing some of the future tasks of analysis. So I did make a doc in the drive, just a February progress report draft where we can start to list out some of these key areas. And then I guess you can compile all your thoughts and documentation in that doc if you'd like as well. But including things like figures and pictures, maybe if you're working in the lab, or I guess in our case, more so screenshots of your computer, than really anything visual to aid in your word explanation is super helpful, just because when you're reading kind of a long technical document, I think the last thing you want to see is just a giant block of text. So yeah, I think also taking a look at the first onboarding presentation we had last semester, talking about what the team is looking for in terms of documentation and not really writing for length, but more for writing succinctly to get your point across and doing so in an efficient manner. But yeah, if you have any questions regarding documentation, feel free to shoot away. And yeah, I'm pretty confident we can get this all updated and then keep on track with documentation as we continue into further into the spring semester. That was all I wanted to cover for today's meeting. So any questions from anyone?
Yeah, I had one kind of directed at Gus, not really like a technical question at all, but that SolidWorks file that you sent from the drive, for some reason I can't open it. Do you guys have a specific place on the drive that y'all have it? Maybe I could look at it there.
The file I sent, I think, is X_T or whatever the what's it called? The FEM? No, it's not FEMAP. What's the modeling one for Siemens?
I'm not sure, but I think Arturo was asking for like a Parasolid file, but I don't know if that's what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
that's the one, Parasolid.
Yeah. But do you guys have like the actual one itself? Like the part
I
file? of the
can
SolidWorks?
I can send you a list of exports that I can export to, and then just choose whatever you want. I'll send it through that.
Okay, that's fine. Thanks.
Well, if there's no more questions, then just a reminder for everyone to look at the sub-team task agreement. And if your name isn't already down from what we kind of gathered last semester, then feel free to start claiming some projects. And then if you are assigned to a project, make sure to update your sub steps, and then we can talk about deadlines for those and how that lines up. But other than that, you're good to go. There's no more questions. Thank you for coming.
This is not anything related to what we just talked about, but I'm trying to I'm doing research on my L1. I'm gonna try and get certified this semester. So my initial thought process is I want to design my own rocket because that seems just more cool and more just fun. But I'm honestly looking at the components, and there's a lot of stuff I would have to get to do my own. So what is y'all's recommendation? Should I go ahead and just get one of these kits so I can just get certified, or should I take all this time and effort to buy all these individual parts and retainers and stuff and then build my own rocket?
I would say just do your kit just to get it over with, and then you can just launch whatever else you want with your L1 motor. But if you do want to go with cheaper options, don't buy the prefabbed parts, like the centering rings and motor tubes and all that stuff. They you can find people who will sell that stuff or just make it for you. So the centering rings, you can have somebody laser cut them for $2-3.
So these kits that I'm looking at on apogeerockets.com for a rocket that you would just buy a kit, it's $190 for a 2.6 diameter, a 4 foot long that runs on a H, I, or J motor. So if you're saying not to buy one of those kits and just get COTS parts, or
you can do either. I guess what I'm saying is it just depends on what you want. If you just want to get your L1 over with so you can play around with designs and not have to worry about the actual cert flight and having it work perfect, then go ahead and do your kit. if you want to like actually play around and just come up with something by yourself because you got the time, then go for that. But additional to that, what I'm saying is, if you're going to make your own, don't use the parts that are like listed on there, because you can either make them yourselves, or have somebody who has the machinery to do it pretty inexpensively.
I mean, I think the one thing I would need to get myself is just the airframe and the nose cone. I could probably fabricate everything else.
Yeah.
But
You
I
could
mean, I'm
even
looking at,
3D print the nose cone.
oh yeah, that's true. I mean, I'm looking at the kits, and like a lot of them are not even in stock right now. Like almost every single kit is not in stock except for 2 of them. And I mean, these are all right rockets. Like one of them is $89. That'd be very cheap. I could probably build it in like 2 weekends and then launch. But I don't think I'll be making it in time for this launch on the 12th. But for any launch afterwards or whatever.
Yeah, if you're
I mean,
working like maybe 2 hours a day on like the weekends or whatever, you could probably do it in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I probably could, honestly. I
You
am
just
also
have to
looking to get my Tripoli I need to get my Tripoli membership. I have like an application in, but like they haven't come back to me on anything yet.
Really quick, Gustavo. Just a question about the boat tail, because it opened in PMAP, so I was just looking at it. The way that we're gonna like, I guess, keep it in the rocket or like in place or constrain it in it. What was the idea? Because I don't see any bolt holes, so I'm assuming. And I don't-
Yeah,
I'm guessing it's
that's
not
a
just
fair
friction,
point.
but-
It was just a rough CAD, but I can clean it up and add all that stuff. There's 2 trains of thought, I guess, that haven't been completely sorted. One is to keep that shoulder on the boat tail, like the coupler shoulder, whatever you want to call it, and
Mhm.
have some bolt holes that I guess bolt in between the fins, and it'd have like some tabs that go forward that bolt in between the fins.
Right.
The other idea is just keep the shoulders on there and don't worry about bolts, because once you like put the motor in and it's going to have a retainer that's up towards the front of the motor, then by having the motor held in, you're also technically keeping the boat tail in.
Mm. Okay, gotcha. Gotcha. And the whole thing was just fiberglass pretty much, or like gonna be laid up in fiberglass, that's what y'all said?
Yeah.
Cool.
Kind of sucks that the 3D print for the layup came out like a 1/10 of an inch short in both X and Y dimensions. So it just like slips right through the airframe.
Yeah. It's unlucky. What was
Yeah.
the reasoning why that happened, by the way?
I've been playing around with my printer and I thought it was pretty close to like being dead on with like real world values. So I just put 5.9 inches for the coupler area and the 6 inches for like the edge of the thing. But when it printed, it's like 3% or something off the actual
Oh,
value.
damn.
With really small stuff, it's like imperceptible. But that's my first very large print, and I guess it added up to more than I thought. So
Gotcha. Live and learn.
that's life. But yeah, I'm gonna go to